Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. Have you received your invitation to the coronation? Because 2,000 lucky people will be receiving theirs in the post now that they've been hand-finished and personalised by a team of calligraphers. How exciting. Please do tell me if one turns up on your doorstep, won't you, my dears? I would love to hear from you, seriously. But for those of you that haven't received one, please don't be jealous, because I can tell you that those congregations, those sort of abbeys, never have a good view. Unless you're right up the front where the action is, it's going to be a rotten view for all those people. They'll just be looking at somebody's head or at a wall. Perhaps they'll have a monitor there, but Westminster Abbey is famous for it amongst other abbeys and cathedrals. So don't be too envious. You can watch from the comfort of your home with a fabulous view of everything that's going on up close. So you can look forward to that. I've got to say, I'm very distressed and really quite upset about some rumours and whispers regarding this coronation. We all know it's being done on a much smaller scale. I would have preferred it to be dripping in glamour, expense and scale, with the scaffolding straining in Westminster Abbey, with every peer in the land there. The whispers that are coming through about dukes being dropped from the invitation list is horrifying if it's true, and it does appear that it is true. I have great faith in the Duke of Norfolk, the Earl Marshal, who is orchestrating this entire thing, because he did such a fabulous job over the past year with all the other royal goings on. Fabulous job. That's why I'm holding as much fire as I possibly can. But when you have people like the Duke of Rutland coming forward to say that he hasn't received one and he is not sure why, can't quite understand it, one starts to worry. It's the repercussions of this that are going to be the real nuisance, because I've no doubt that it will be a beautiful service. I've no doubt that it's going to wow everybody. I really think that it is going to take everybody's breath away, even though it's smaller in scale. But it is the repercussions of the lack of some of the traditions, including the tie to aristocracy. Perhaps the royal family have decided they want to play that down in this new woke world, in this dystopian new woke world, but I'm afraid they're cutting off their nose to spite their face, because for those who aren't au fait with the evolution of monarchy, it is intertwined. One would have thought irrevocably or indelibly, apparently not, intertwined with grand families, ducal families, aristocratic families, and these are loyal families, loyal to the crown, and some of them are going to take some umbrage, and the royal family might pay that price, because that kind of loyalty that is built up over centuries isn't easily earned or reattained once it has been besmirched or taken for granted. So, I am trying to take a step back and trust Charles's judgment and the Earl Marshal's judgment, and I want to bite my tongue as much as possible until after proceedings, so I can have a true oversight of it. But it doesn't bode that well to me, I've got to tell you. The Duke of Rutland told Richard Eden, "I've not been asked, and I don't really understand why. It's been families like mine that have supported the royal family for over 1,000 years or thereabouts." I remember watching a documentary a while back, and I can't remember which family it was, but they opened an old closet that nobody uses in one of their huge stately homes and pulled out the coronation robes from the last time their family were involved 70 years ago. They were almost sort of moth-eaten old boxes, but the robes were fine. I think they needed a bit of a spruce, but they were there. The coronets were there that all the peers in the land wore at the last coronation. How sad to think that they've been saved up there for 70 years, all these decades, going mouldy, waiting to be pulled out for their moment. It makes me feel quite sad to think of these poor, lowly coronets that are going to be stuck in their boxes. You'll probably see them coming up for sale on eBay over the next few years, because they're surplus to requirement now, not needed. How very sad. Why? It's pointless. Why do you want to take the richness and the fun out of proceedings? Why do you want to play to the hoi polloi? Why do you want to play to the cheap seats? Why do you want to play to those that aren't in love with monarchy anyway? This has always been my point. They should be playing to the crowds that already love them, because the support is there. It is there. But it won't be if they keep ignoring us and our wishes, those of us who are fans of royalty and excess. and exclusivity. I'm sick to death of hearing about inclusivity, this inclusive, diverse ceremony. I don't want inclusiveness. I don't want diversity. No, we already have variety. Now, that is a lovely word. Throughout the entire Commonwealth and the kingdom, we have variety. We have all the colours of the rainbow and everything else. But these anodyne words, diversity, inclusion, no, I want an exclusive ceremony, full of rich variety, but exclusive. A club that everybody wants to join, that is full of mystery, that is full of magic. You know, I don't want some HR meeting. They're the sort of words you use for an HR meeting, you know. We need to make things more inclusive and diverse. How unroyal. And I don't know what's going to happen in this coronation, but in the previous coronation, the monarch, the late Queen Elizabeth, was firstly approached by the royal dukes. So firstly there was the Duke of Edinburgh, her husband Philip, who removed his coronet, who approached her, who knelt, who placed his hand between her two hands and proclaimed his words of homage. And it was the right of every senior member of every type of peerage to proclaim those words of homage at Her Majesty's hand. So he was first, then it was the two other royal dukes, the Duke of Gloucester and the Duke of Kent, and there followed regular non-royal dukes, headed up by the senior duke, and they all enacted the same ritual. And as the head of each peerage, so the head of the dukes, the head of the marquesses, I'm presuming that's plural for marquess instead of marquis or marquis, the head of the marquesses, the most senior marquess, the most senior earl, the most senior viscount, and the most senior baron, as they all performed the ritual, then the more junior or less ranking of their ilk did the same at their seats. That's where you saw that marvellous rippling effect of them all removing their coronets, all the dukes at one point, all the earls, all the, you know, this lovely sort of domino effect of the rippling of the coronets and the proclaiming their words of homage to Her late Majesty. And oh, it'll be such a shame if it just diminishes in effect for this coronation. And oh, I truly hope, you know, you hear all this talk about them. No tiaras, I ask you. Oh, what a thought. No tiaras at a coronation. I would have to pinch myself and wake up from such a nightmare, my dear. You know, we want jewels, we want coronets, we want the whole kit and caboodle, my dears, don't we? And one of the reasons that this beggars belief is that there are only 24 non-royal dukes left. It's not as if there are squillions of them. It's not like they'll be overtaking the proceedings. I'm just talking about dukes here, not those of the other ranks of peerage. But there's only 24 non-royal dukes. Surely they could all be invited along. This coronation should be about monarchy, and at the heart of it should be Anglican Christianity. That is what the service is and what it should be about, unapologetically. It is a coronation. It is not a Jubilee concert. As fun as some of them might be, it's not some pop concert extravaganza. It's Justin Welby overseeing the arrangements, not Elton John on this occasion. Might have been more fun with Elton, but no, it is not. It is Justin Welby. I received a comment from a gentleman called Tim Broadbent, who has a YouTube channel and appears to be a guitarist or musician of some kind. A rather cheeky comment that said, "Time for a republic, my dears," and a coronation ditty that he had composed. And some of the lyrics were along the lines of, "Spoilt brat with his sycophants going berserk. Use your own stinking biro if theirs doesn't work. It's king's new clothes, a life that's fake. Windsor's all wind, no give, just take." Well, I do think that that is a hideously unfair and unreasonable assessment to make about royalty, my dear. And I don't think that they are no give and just take. Is that really what you think that Elizabeth did for 70 years? Giving her whole life to us as subjects? Yes, she gets to eat fine cuisine when she wants and have as many corgis as she needs and a comfortable bed at the end of the night, and, you know, a few palaces chucked in as well for good measure. But I really do think that they do give as well as take, as you say. The prince's trust, all the various work that Charles has done throughout his life, I don't think you can really accuse them of just sitting back and taking. They work, and King Charles is only beginning his greatest work at the age of 74, 75. So I do think that's a little bit unreasonable, although I take the fact that you are expressing your views, Mr. Broadbent, with your sense of humour, and you are entitled to do so. You say it's time for a republic, my dears, and the reason that I'm reading out your rather cheeky comment is because A, you're entitled to that point of view, but B, I happen to believe, I've said it before, but it may surprise some of you that haven't heard me say it, I do believe that we should have a referendum in this country and give people the chance to abolish the monarchy and become a republic. I would like to live out the rest of my days living under a constitutional monarchy because that suits my sensibilities, and I happen to believe that it is a better form of government, and certainly for this nation. I don't like the thought of living under a head of state that is not neutral. That is what I enjoy, and there's a reason why after 11 years before the Reformation, when we were a protectorate and became a republic, there's a reason that they demanded the return of King Charles II. They didn't want a republic. But that was a different time, it was a different England, and perhaps it was a more patriotic United Kingdom as well. And if the time has come in this era of rapid immigration, and as somebody who has always understood and accepted and welcomed healthy immigration, I have also seen how it has sped up unnaturally over the last 3 years to the point where it is damaging and eroding our national identity. We're not the only country where this has happened. It's happened throughout Europe. It's sad to watch countries losing their character because they are being engulfed by cultures that don't necessarily jive with theirs or enhance theirs. Because in moderation, various cultures can jive with each other and rub along very nicely together. But my problem is when it is done in so swiftly and so rapidly, and when we're not just talking about legal immigration, and when it is just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands pouring in with a sort of open border feeling and attitude. I realise I'm digressing, but what I'm trying to tell you is that yes, I would prefer to live out my days under a constitutional monarchy, but if that is not how the character of this nation is going to be developing over the next few generations, I don't think they deserve necessarily to have a monarchy and to have a royal family that dedicate their life working for us. 6 in 10 Britons thought that the monarchy should continue, so that's 62%, down from a high of 75% of support in 2012. So support is diminishing, but only 22% of those polled last year said that we should move on to an elected head of state. So that's still a very low percentage, isn't it? 22% want that elected head of state. So it'll be interesting to compare those figures when a poll is taken after Charles is crowned. That in theory, I support a referendum, but I must say that I was very sad to hear that the group Republic, who are lobbying for the abolition of the monarchy, although I have supported their right to protest, as they have done over the last few months at every event that the King and the Queen have attended, they keep protesting away with their neon banners, and as I've been saying, they have the right to do so. They've done it peaceably, and they haven't been throwing eggs or flour at these particular characters or acting like crazies. They've just been making their point. They have the right to do that, but I'm very sad to hear that they've chosen to congregate on the day of the coronation. They say that they will be making sure they make their way to the front of the barriers, about at least 1,500 people, 1,500 people, with their neon banners. And the reason I'm upset for this isn't even for the royal family, because they'll brush it off. It's for everyone that wants to attend that day. take photographs and enjoy the imagery, I think it's bad form not to give that day to those of us who love the monarchy. Do you know what I mean? Because all the imagery, the video footage, as if it isn't going to be vulgar enough with everybody now holding their iPhones aloft and recording everything, which spoils the photographs of these proceedings anyway. Now we're going to have great big neon signs saying "Not my king, not my king." They're going to be chanting away, and obviously it's the effect that they apparently want to have. Well, congratulations, my dear, congratulations, but I'm afraid that's not sporting in my view. You know, I've had a sporting attitude towards their protests because I think they've got the right to do it, but I wish they would reciprocate that sporting attitude, because it's spoiling a nice day out for people and a nice memory for good if they're going to be doing that. And actually, I say ban them. I know it's not very libertarian, but for that one day, ban them. I would round them all up and lock them in the tower for the day. I'm afraid, my dear, I don't want vulgar neon signs all over the coronation for our head of state, my dear. So if any of you are watching this, my dear, if you insist on turning up there, can't you keep it to some small portion of the parade so that you make your point and are done with it and allow the king to get on, and all the people that are turning up from all corners of the globe for this coronation, allow them to have their one day in 70 years, my dear. Well, now we're going to talk about the 13 ceremonial roles and the people behind them for this coronation that have been announced by the Coronation Claims Office. And the Duchy of Lancaster revealed that they received 200 applications for these roles, over 200 applications, from people that believe that they are descendants of those ancestors who fulfilled these roles in the past. Now, some of these turned out to be family fables, not quite cricket, but some of them were the real thing, and many of these positions date back 800 years or more. So that is reassuring to know that some traditions are being upheld. So the first is the Great Lord Chamberlain. In this case, it's Lord Carrington, and this role rotates between his family, the Cholmleys, and the Willoughby Desbys. In the past, the Great Lord Chamberlain would dress and undress the monarch. Well, in this case, Lord Carrington is going to be taking part in investing the king with regalia, including the crown jewels. The second ceremonial role is going to the Earl of Errol. This is Merlin Hay, the 24th Earl of Errol. And don't you always want somebody called Merlin at your coronation? I think it should be absolutely mandatory. Merlin Hay. He is the chief of the Scotch clan Hay, and as Lord High Constable of Scotland, he's going to be bearing a silver baton or staff during the ceremonial role. And the third ceremonial role will be undertaken by the 15th Earl of Loudon, Simon Abney Hastings, who will perform the role of bearer of the golden spurs. The golden spurs represent the monarch's knightly values or virtues. And this Earl of Loudon is coming over from Australia, and his family have been bearers dating all the way back to Richard I in the 1100s. Next is the Bishop of Durham, who is going to escort the sovereign as Bishop Assistant to the King, which is an ancient role, and he will be accompanying His Majesty into the Abbey and standing next to the St Edward's chair during the anointing. And another Bishop Assistant to the King is the Bishop of Bath and Wells. He will be escorting the sovereign too. And this type of role has existed since the coronation of Edgar in 973. Next we have the Lord Mayor of London. In this case it's Nicholas Lyons, and he's also the leader of the City of London Corporation, which is the corporation that runs the city's historic and financial square mile. He holds one of the world's oldest continuously elected offices, although his role at this coronation is yet to be confirmed, but he'll be there. And at number 7 we have a woman at last. I'm afraid there's not much representation from women in this particular list, but she is the Clerk of the Crown in Chancery. Her name is Antonia Romeo, and as head of the Crown Office, she's a civil servant and permanent secretary of the Ministry of Justice. She's responsible for the administrative functions in the courts and judicial processes. She is responsible for recording the coronation. And then we have the Dean and Chapter of the Collegiate Church of St. Peter, which is also known as Westminster Abbey. And as what's known as a royal peculiar, the church is under the jurisdiction of a dean, the Very Reverend David Hoyle, but it's under the jurisdiction of a dean and a chapter, which are subject only to the sovereign. They are not subject to any bishop or archbishop. That is a peculiarity, a royal peculiarity of this church. And the dean and chapter will instruct the monarch in the forms, rites and ceremonies of the coronation. The Earl of Dundee is a Scotch peer, a hereditary member of the House of Lords, and is chief of the Scrymgeour clan. He is the hereditary royal standard bearer of Scotland and will carry the quartering of the standard of Scotland in the procession. The 10th ceremonial roll goes to Dr. John Arms as a member of the Walker Trustees and in his role as the Anglican Bishop of Edinburgh. And the Walker Trustees is a body into which the heritable usher of the White Rod was incorporated. What a fabulous title. And this role carries no duties, but prior to the Scottish Union with England in 1707, there was then a gentleman usher of the White Rod in the Estates Parliament of Edinburgh, and they had a similar role to the gentleman of the usher of the Black Rod in the Parliament of Westminster. You know how you'll sometimes see, at the moment, I think it's a lady, isn't it, who performs the function as Black Rod. All this talk of black rods and white rods makes one a bit flustered, doesn't it, my dear? But do you see, there's always been diversity within the kingdom, my dear. Black, white, we don't care what colour your rod is, my dear. Just make sure you wave it, and wave it royally when the time comes. Next is the Lord Lion, King of Arms and Heralds and Pursuivants of Scotland. This is the Scotch equivalent to the Earl Marshal role fulfilled by the Duke of Norfolk, and is the heraldic authority of Scotland, and he will form part of the procession, overseeing the ceremonial events in Scotland. Next are the Barons of the Cinque Ports, who are representing the Confederation of the Cinque Ports that were originally formed for trade and military purposes back in the Middle Ages. That's when they all peaked, but now it's mainly a ceremonial function. These barons are elected by mayors and councils, and it's a purely honorary role in nature. And finally, Lord Hastings will be appearing in this coronation. Nobody's quite sure why. He used to be an actor. He once had a role in the radio soap opera The Archers, and since then he's gone on to be a farmer. So nobody is quite sure what he's going to be doing, but he will be there. So look out for them in the coronation, my dears. Sophie Edinburgh was at a youth centre for autistic children this morning in Surrey. She's been patron of the National Autistic Society since 2003. She looked very nice in a tan jacket by Max Mara and a floral number by Victoria Beckham. She took a baking lesson and she watched painting and drawing, and at the weekend she was also spotted doing a little bit of carriage driving. Her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, also made an appearance at a special big lunch, and he was munching some of that official coronation quiche and seemed to be enjoying it. He was with Prue Leith at Westminster Abbey there, hoping to inspire all our country to do the same and holding big lunches up and down the country. And Prue Leith said that the quiche was absolutely delicious. She gave her verdict on it. Absolutely delicious, and there was no soggy bottom. So on that cheeky note, I will leave you to it. Catch up with you next time on the broadcast. Thank you for dropping by. Leave me a nice juicy comment, won't you, my dears? Ta-ra and toodle pip.